Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Confidence Conversations podcast. Now, this is the final episode of this series. That's series 3. And what an amazing series it's been, actually. I have thoroughly enjoyed it. It's been some great confidence conversations topics with some fabulous guests. And as a quick recap, here are the people I have chatted to. I talked to Noelle about confidence and menopause, Vanessa about vision boards, Victoria about financial confidence, Emma about boundaries, Carolyn about self-doubt, Nikki about the comfort zone, Claire about comparisonitis, Melissa about courage, Ricky about flow, Tamsin about neurodiversity, Vanda about reframing, and Jackie all about the inner critic. Phew, take a breath. Lots of great people with loads of experience and lots of knowledge to share too. So thank you to them. So to wrap up this series, I thought I'd put myself in the hot seat. And I asked each guest to send me a question about their topic so I could answer and give my thoughts, my opinion, or a view. Deep breath. Here goes then. The first question comes from Noelle from Blueberries and Jellyfish. And we talked about the menopause and confidence. And Noelle's question was, what are the top 3 things that have improved your confidence during midlife brain and hormonal changes? So without oversharing too much for anybody, personally, I've been quite lucky and I've not had too many symptoms. I'm 50 this year, recording this in 2025. And I've obviously had some of the obvious symptoms that you will hear of, like hot flushes. I'm clearly wearing glasses. I don't know if that's related. And forgetful, like in the middle of sentences when I've been chatting to somebody. But other than that, so far, luckily, I've been okay. Now, I also then went on to share her 3 things, and these are brilliant, actually. The first one is strength training, and she says by physically getting stronger, it makes her feel mentally stronger too, and less afraid of moving around daily life. She says she also works in a care home, so she sees people who fear their own bodies and moving. So this inspires her to do what she can do to stop that. She also says saying no in ways such as, thank you for thinking of me, but I'm not available. It feels really empowering not to take on more, which many, many women tend to do. The third thing is embracing a new experience or new knowledge by trying new things, learning about a new area of study. She's found that these have really ignited a sense of adventure for her and excitement, leading to this sort of increased sense of self-assurance and confidence. Now, for me, as I was reflecting on this was like mind, body and soul, yeah? So strength training for physical well-being and looking after yourself, making you feel more confident in your physical ability. We've then got saying no, which is addressing our boundaries. What there's courage in saying yes, as well as there is courage in saying no, most definitely. And then finally, embracing new ideas. It's easy to get in our zone of comfort as we get older, isn't it? And not to step out of that quite so much as we'd like to. So some 3 great tips there. Noelle, thank you so much. And thank you for your question. It really made me think on that one as well. So my second question comes from Vanessa Book from Vision Boards for All. And we obviously spoke about vision boards, and one of the things Vanessa said that really resonated with me was about, a vision board with just pictures is a dream, but actually taking action with it makes it happen. And Vanessa's question is that she did a beautiful vision board, which she absolutely loves, and she came away believing that she could make it happen. And now she's stepped away, she's doubting herself. She acknowledged that fear is playing a big part with this kind of feeling of disruption on autopilot to do things differently, which takes more headspace and more effort. She also reminded me that, she probably needs to pull her big pants up here because Betty's out. And Betty's, for those of you that don't know, is my inner critic. So I thought this was a really interesting one, and how we feel confident and empowered maybe in the moment, and then when we step away, this kind of fear and doubt creeps in. And my thoughts on this one, and Vanessa kind of set it as, Betty's the inner critic and she's out and you probably need to pull your big pants up to deal with her. And without that being flippant, I think in this situation with a client, I'd be asking, what is the reason for doing the vision board in the first place? And to keep reminding yourself of that and keep coming back to that reason. I'd probably also ask you what it was that meant you left believing you could make it happen. Go back to that moment and put it in your back pocket so you can whip it out later when you need it. Finally, I'd want to challenge that fear. So what is it you're fearing? What are you afraid of? And I think sometimes acknowledging the fear can make it smaller. And why not go and chat to someone that you trust, someone that's going to tell you the truth and be really honest with you, someone you feel safe with or safe enough with to share, and share that fear with them so that you can, again, address it and make it smaller. So thanks for sharing that, Vanessa. I really hope that you have found some inspiration in your vision board and that you can take yourself back. Why don't you go and check in with your vision board now, maybe with a bit of a different perspective, and see how you're feeling about that. My next question comes from Nikki Forster from the Curious Lighthouse. And when we spoke, we talked about the comfort zone. And this was all brought out of a conversation that Nikki and I had over coffee about stepping out of our comfort zone, and how maybe when you're a little bit younger, Nikki and I have the similar learning and development backgrounds. When you're younger, you kind of just go off on a whim and you don't worry about whether you're going to get stuck in traffic, where you're going to park, all of that kind of thing. And now we tend to check out things a little bit more. Maybe we're a bit more aware of things that might go wrong or might happen that we might need to be prepared for. So Nikki said her question had to be, when was the last time you purposefully stepped out of your comfort zone? Why? And how did you either prepare for it or cope with it as it was happening? Thanks, Nikki. A great question to reflect on. And I think for me, stepping out of my comfort zone probably happens in most coaching sessions, because I often go into them not knowing what will happen. So not knowing what the outcome will be, what the person wants to talk about, and not knowing where we're going to go to get to the end. Most recently, I've noticed I stepped out of my comfort zone doing a workshop where I decided to try an old activity with a new approach, if you like, and it was a bit of a brave move. I had no idea if it would work. And to add into the mix, I'd also had some feedback recently that had knocked my confidence. So I knew that I had to step back out of my comfort zone again in this workshop so that I could rebuild that sense of confident feeling. And it paid off, and the feedback's been really good. You'll also know that my motto is pulling up your big pants. So pull up your big pants and go and do it. Go and do that thing you're fearing. And I don't think I know that when that's going around in my head, something uncomfortable is coming up. I'm facing into something that I fear or that I'm afraid of, or that's going to make me feel vulnerable. So I tend to do, I think, small things that push me out of my comfort zone that might not be completely obvious to other people. And networking is definitely one of those for me. I think I have this quite calm exterior most of the time. So this is often what people see on the outside, when on the inside, I've got kind of that nervous excitement feeling in the pit of my stomach. Somebody once said to me as well a while ago, I think I asked them, when do you see me stepping out of my comfort zone? And their answer was, well, I don't think I do. And I think that is because I have this calm exterior. So I probably won't let on to people that I'm feeling nervous or I'm feeling anxious or I'm feeling worried, because that's just me and that's just the way I am. But definitely in my head will be, come on, girl, pull up your big pants. You can do this. So yeah, Nikki, I think there's some things that I do unconsciously that make me think, oh, I'm just about to step out. Definitely, without a doubt. And maybe when I'm in the moment, it's more of a, come on, girl, pull up your big pants. You can do this. So yeah, thank you for your question, Nikki, and we need a coffee date soon. The next question comes from the fabulous Melissa Haig, and I have known Melissa probably now maybe for 3 years, maybe it's longer than that. And we first met at networking, some coach networking. And Melissa was talking all about the work that she had done with Brené Brown around vulnerability and courage. And this felt like it was right up my street and really appealed. So I've spent a few years working with Melissa to build up my own courage in my coaching. And actually that has transpired that I've built my courage generally as well. So Melissa's question is, what have I learned by building confidence by practicing courage? What have I learned about building confidence by practicing courage? So I think for me, the biggest thing that I've learned is that confidence and courage are so intrinsically linked that you literally can't have one without the other. For me, courage is the thing that builds the foundation for the confidence feeling, because confidence is a feeling, right? It's how we feel about things. And I think that you need courage when you take action. And then in turn, it's the action that gives you confidence. Oh, it sounds really obvious, doesn't it? But until I started working with Melissa, I don't think I'd really made that really deep connection between the two and that they are so intrinsically linked. So for me, courage then comes in many, many forms, from the obvious of pulling up your big pants, which I've already talked about, to do things, to consciously take action, I suppose, to more kind of in the moment things where I have to step out of my comfort zone. I think as well, it's important to say that courage isn't loud, doesn't have to be big. And again, there's courage in saying yes, of course there is, but there's also courage in saying no. And that's really important. The other point to make is that confidence is so multifaceted, right? It means so many things to so many different people. And Brené Brown says you can't get to courage without vulnerability. And I truly believe that you can't get to confidence without courage. So, Melissa, I think I could probably go on forever and list more of the things that I've learned while working with you. But that would be my main takeaway about building confidence while practicing courage, is that this link between the two and how one is the foundation for the other. So yeah, thank you for your question, and I'll see you very, very soon. So the next thing for me to reflect on was sent from the wonderful Vanda Varga, who is a master practitioner in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. And Vanda and I had a great conversation all about the tools and techniques that you can use in coaching from NLP. And I did my NLP practitioners training back in COVID. Remember those times? And I realized that there were lots of techniques I was using in coaching that were NLP techniques, but actually I hadn't labeled them as that. And one of the techniques that I really loved was around reframing. So that was what Vanda and I chatted a lot about, amongst a host of loads of other things. And Vanda's question is, what does reframing mean to you? And how do you use it in your client work and or everyday life? So Vanda, now you know that I love a reframe. And this isn't to be a positive Polly, right? But it's to always just take a different perspective or a different view on what's happened and to look at things a bit differently. And personally, for me, I use it most often when something hasn't gone quite to plan or quite as I'd hoped. And I think in our episode, we talked a lot about reframing mistakes and failure. And I think you said, Vanda, that, you either succeed or you learn. And this was something in the beginning of my business and still now, 6 years on, that I try not to see things that haven't gone quite as I'd hoped as a failure or a mistake, because there's always an opportunity for learning. And actually, if I didn't say yes to some of those things, I wouldn't learn, and then my business still wouldn't be here 6 years on, and I wouldn't have grown in my coaching as a coach and my business. Now, for clients, I think this shows up most often when they are doubting themselves. I can think of one particular client where we talked a lot about how she had been brought into the role she was doing on a project. and also what skills and abilities she brought to that project. And when we talked that through, this kind of helped to ground her a bit, to anchor her. There's another NLP technique. And when things felt tough or weren't going quite as she'd hoped, she was then able to come back to this and reframe that for her on her own. We did a bit of it together, but then she was also able to do that on her own. Another client I worked with, she was a manager with a reasonable sized team. She got herself into a position where, as the manager, she felt everything was her responsibility, and she was heading to burnout quite quickly. And now, whilst as a manager, obviously you do have accountability for everything, you're not responsible for getting everything done. And for this client, reframing really helped in terms of how much or how little her team were learning when she was running around doing the things that they could, should, and would be able to do. So I think boundaries here helped her to reframe her thinking around how capable the team were. And this worked so much so that she was able to go on holiday for a week to Dubai for the first time in years without getting calls and messages from her team. So for me in coaching, that was a real win-win, because it just demonstrated how a reframe of thinking about how your team might work and what they might be capable of can help you to put some boundaries in place that ultimately help you. So yeah, thank you, Vanda. Thanks for making me think about how I use it in everyday life and with clients as well, because you tend to get on a bit of a hamster wheel. So yeah, that was a really lovely reflection. Now, Jackie Jagger and I talked about the inner critic, one of our favourite topics. And Jackie and I go back quite a few years, maybe about 15 years. And we saw each other in real life for the first time in 10 years a little while ago. And it was glorious. It was lovely to chat. And I think I had way too much coffee, but it was still lovely to chat. So on the back of our conversation about the inner critic, Jackie's question was, increasing self-awareness is vital for personal and professional growth, but it is not always easy, especially when your inner critic shows up. Oh yes, hello Betty. So Jackie wants to know, how do I help clients build their self-awareness without triggering self-doubt? Right, this is really interesting, isn't it, in relation to confidence, because again, confidence and self-doubt are so closely linked. And there are a couple of immediate ways that I can think I use in coaching. And the first one, as a tool, if you like, is behavioural profiling. Now, I have worked with behavioural profiling probably over about the last 18 years in various different forms. The one I'm working with currently is Everything Disc by Wiley, for which I'm a trained facilitator. And I would say that behavioural profiling used in the right way, and I'm not talking, this is not psychological profiling. I don't know that we should be doing that in coaching, but what we can assess are people's behaviours and how those behaviours play out when they're under stress, when they're working well, when they're communicating with others, when they're interacting with other people around them. And I think it can really help increase self-awareness. Don't get me wrong, it's not appropriate for everybody. And I don't use it with every client. I sometimes use it as a basis for our conversation, because I do believe that they have to be delivered properly. So please don't do a profile without having a debrief from a trained facilitator, because I think that actually that can raise your self-doubt rather than raising your self-awareness. So if you think that might be something that would help you and you're prepared to put in the work, that can be a really useful tool for you to understand your own behavioural preferences and how they might play out. But the value for me in those things comes from having a discussion with somebody who's trained and somebody who uses it regularly, who can bring examples, who can observe your behaviour, who can think about things that you've just said in relation to the report. So not to use it just as a report, but to use it as a whole blended approach. The other tool that is aimed at increasing self-awareness, and I'm not sure sometimes of its effectiveness, and that's 360 feedback. So I think 360 feedback can be really effective when, again, it's delivered really, really well. But sometimes 360 can increase self-doubt. Rather than whilst it's aimed at raising your self-awareness, this seems to be this link, doesn't there, between raising self-awareness and increasing self-doubt, and one can impact the other. So again, I would say with 360, make sure it's delivered properly. Make sure you're getting it from somebody that you trust and you like and you know, and that you're able to talk about it, not justify any of the comments, but to talk about it properly and to think about where you might have been perceived like that, or where that might have happened. Because actually having self-awareness comes in many forms, right? And 360 can help you to do that. I think the final point on this question about increasing self-awareness in coaching specifically would be for me around questioning, listening, and reflecting back what I've heard in sessions. And I think this can be really important. So a little bit like the answer to Vanda's question, sometimes a reframe of a situation, a different perspective shared with a client can really raise their self-awareness. And I think sometimes that self-awareness then diminishes the self-doubt. And a while ago, a client of mine, we call it our Cafe Nero moment, she had asked me for some really specific feedback on what I'd observed. I pulled up my big pants to give her that feedback because it was tough. And she said to me, it hurt in that moment. But on reflection, what she has realised is it's really raised her self-awareness about her behaviour. So the courage that I learned with Melissa to give that piece of feedback to my client has helped to raise her self-awareness and diminish some of this self-doubt about her behaviour. So, wow. Thank you, Jackie. Very, very interesting question. And so then to wrap up the wrap up the wrap up, the magical Ricky Locke and I, well, originally I asked Ricky to come onto the podcast because I wanted to understand what his observations were of the difference between men and women in confidence, because he does a lot of work with the Confidence Club, with presenting, and he sees these people regularly interacting with each other and what plays out there. And we ended up kind of talking about confidence being a flow state.
Hey, Gail. So my question that I would like to ask you is all about state. Now, we talked a lot about presenting and the question about the difference between men and women presenting. But my question is for you, of when you go out on stage or when you show up and present, how do you get into state? What is it that you do? Is it dancing? Is it breath work? Is it just being absolutely calm? I'd love to know how you show up in your confident state.
So Ricky's question is, what do I do to get into a flow state before a presentation? Well, do you know what, Ricky? I wish I could say to you that actually I do some kind of brilliant power pose or something a bit random or something a bit weird. But I'm really sorry to disappoint, I actually don't. I'm used to presenting, facilitating workshops and doing talks because that is what I've done in my whole professional career. But that doesn't mean that I don't get nervous beforehand, right? I think for me, if I didn't get nervous, then there would be something wrong. But to get into flow, I do lots of boring or really simple stuff. But this kind of thing really works and means that I do get into my flow, and then means that usually, hopefully, fingers crossed, everything goes quite well. So the first thing I do is to know what I'm saying. I do my prep and I probably over prepare. So I might start with a mind map and then I'll put it into sections and then into sentences, then I'll chop it and change it and move it around. I also make sure I have various versions or copies of my presentations or notes, or a version saved on the cloud or on the desktop, just in case I can't access it. I do have my talk on cue cards. So some people might say, well, that's not very confident, is it? Because you've got essentially a comfort blanket in front of you. But actually, for me, there is confidence in having those notes as well as not having notes. I'm not one of these people that can just talk. And part of that reason is because I go off track. And so having the notes on a cue card helped me to go off track while I can still do a little bit of ad hoc and adding in examples and stories like I've done here. I will check out where I'm doing the talk or the workshop. And I will also check what the tech is. So do I have all the adapters I need? What's the layout of the room? Will I need a mic? How will I manage the mic and the clicker and the note? I will overthink all of that as well. I do practice, but maybe only once or twice. And in that practice, I check my timing so that I know there's nothing worse than actually somebody overrunning or somebody underrunning and then it feeling really awkward because nobody's got any questions or you want to move on. And then obviously just before I go on stage, if you like, I tell myself to pull up my big pants, obviously, and everything will be fine. So yeah, Ricky, I hope I didn't disappoint you there in my, I don't do any kind of power pose or breath work or anything. It's for me, it's all in that preparation. And some of that is born from the fact that I wouldn't want to let the audience down. So thank you, everybody, for all of your amazing questions. They've really made me think and really made me reflect on some of those. So yeah, really exciting. Thank you. I've really enjoyed answering those and I hope you've enjoyed listening too. So that does wrap up the final Confidence Conversations podcast of series 3. I'm going to be taking a small break to think about what the objectives for the podcast are going to be moving forward. And keep your eye on socials, or if you're subscribed, obviously you'll get to hear about the new episode. But finally from me, if you have watched, listened, downloaded, whether that's been on Spotify or YouTube, or you've gone through my website and you've listened to an episode, you've downloaded or you've shared it or you've talked about it or you've messaged me, massive thank you to you. It is really, really appreciated. And I will see you all soon for series 4.